The United States is not winning in Afghanistan. At least that's a professional assessment of U.S. Defense Secretary Jim Mattis, who testified before lawmakers at a Defense Department budget hearing this week. VOA's Pentagon correspondent Carla Babb has our report.
After nearly 5 months in power, the Trump administration is still working on a new plan for how to stabilize Afghanistan. Tuesday, members of the U.S. Senate Armed Services Committee let top Pentagon leaders know they are sick of waiting.
We want a strategy, and I don't think that's a hell of a lot to ask.
By mid-July, we'll be able to brief you in detail, sir. We're putting it together now, and there are actions being taken to make certain that we don't pay a price for the delay.
200 meters to the east.
Secretary Mattis said the U.S. was drawing strength from allies as part of the plan, which takes time. There are about 13,000 NATO troops in Afghanistan. Sending more is under consideration. He said the defense team needs to alter the current strategy, which officials agree have placed the war-torn country in a stalemate against the Afghan Taliban.
And for a status report on Afghanistan and U.S. efforts there, we are joined here in Washington by VOA Pentagon correspondent Carla Babb, who filed that report for us. And on Skype, VOA international correspondent Ayaz in Islamabad. I thank you both for joining us. So, Carla, let's get to the meat of this issue. What is the U.S. mission in Afghanistan, and what is our objective there?
Well, the objective is something that the Special Operations Commander and the Secretary of Defense have reiterated time and time again on Capitol Hill.
Which is?
The goal is not to allow another attack to come out of that area. It's been 15 and a half years since September 11th, 2001, and that is why the United States is in Afghanistan. That is priority number one. We have a counterterrorism group in there trying to take the fight to terrorists, but also the United States understands that it cannot be a U.S. effort. This has to be something that local forces are able to take care of themselves, and that's why we're supporting the Afghan troops on the ground to make them strong enough so that they can take care of the terror threat and prevent that area from being a, quote, ungoverned space where terrorists can come in and plan attacks.
Right. Ayaz, underscoring the instability in Afghanistan, late Thursday there was another suicide bombing at a Shia mosque in Kabul. Are you getting any details on that attack?
Yeah, what we have as of this moment, Islamic State has just issued a new statement saying that the bombing, which it claimed last night, killed around 17 people, although officials have still put the death toll at 6. But obviously this attack killed a prominent businessman in Kabul and philanthropist who was very close to one of the leaders in the National Unity Government in Kabul. So it seems that he was the target of this attack.
Carla, in your report, you said Senator John McCain wanted to hear more about U.S. strategy. Do we have one? And what do lawmakers really want to know about what we're doing there 16 years later?
Well, it's very frustrating right now because Secretary Mattis actually called this a strategy-free time in Afghanistan. He did promise lawmakers that he would get them a strategy by mid-July, as you saw in the report. But that has been the holdup. They've been kind of putting together everything at once, and the Trump administration has been filling positions, and while that is going on, everything has just kind of been plodding along slowly. Secretary Mattis did say that he was making sure that the holes and the gaps are being filled while the strategy is being planned, but that still isn't very reassuring to people who are on the ground and people who are waiting in the middle of the fighting season for what's going to come next.
In fact, the president has faced a lot of criticism for his handling of the war in Afghanistan. I'm hearing from some analysts that he has essentially abdicated responsibility for this war to his generals.
Well, he has, according to Pentagon officials, he has basically said, this is your fight, and this is not my specialty. I'm going to let you do this and figure this out. And so we just learned this week, a few days ago, that Secretary Mattis has been given the authority to set the numbers. I know that he wants to focus not just on the amount of troops on the ground, but the capabilities that they can bring to the fight. So we've been hearing anywhere between about 3,000 to 5,000 U.S. troops. Other officials have said 3,000 to 5,000 international troops. But these are going to be focusing on primarily helping to rebuild the Air Force for Afghanistan. They currently don't have a very strong one, and they're not going to get a very strong one until at least 2020. And then also trying to double the amount of special operations forces, because those are the guys that have really been bringing the fight to the Taliban and really given the Afghan government an opportunity to stabilize the country.
So we can expect to see more U.S. boots on the ground there. Ayaz, you're a lot closer to the situation there. How do Afghans see the role of the United States in their country? I guess I'm trying to find out, do they consider the U.S. a bank, a security police force, a big brother? How do they see the United States in Afghanistan?
Well, it's like, it's all three of the expressions are true, because the ruling elite in Afghanistan are desperate to have the United States continue its role in Afghanistan, lead role, in fact. And the youth in urban Afghanistan is also in favor of having a stronger U.S. role in the war against the Taliban. But the problem is in the countryside, where most of the region is currently under the control of the Taliban, and it is religiously really a conservative area. And according to the recent U.S. military estimates, around 3 million people, 3 million Afghans live in these areas. So that is the population which is really against any U.S. presence or any presence of foreign forces in the country. So without the U.S. presence, the leaders in Afghanistan, they know that they won't be able to continue fighting against the Taliban even for one day. And this is what President Ashraf Ghani, in one of his recent statements, acknowledged, that the Afghan forces are not in a position to fight for one day against the Taliban if the U.S. blocks fuel supplies for them.
I guess very quickly, my essential question here is that 16 years later, is life any better for Afghanis?
Well, of course not, because over the last 2 years, President Ashraf Ghani last week told an international conference in Kabul that 75,000 Afghans have died, have been killed or wounded. That clearly shows the kind of deterioration that has happened in terms of security in Afghanistan. Things are really becoming bad, and I think the primary the reasons that are being cited are lack of governance and corruption, which is still rampant in government institutions. And I think that is what is keeping the United States from really coming out with a final strategy about how to deal with this situation. And it is the political infighting in Kabul, and it is the corruption that is really encouraging the Taliban to overrun areas in the countryside, because Afghan forces simply withdraw at a time when the Taliban stage a major attack. They simply pull back their forces. And that hide and seek has been going on for the last 2 years,
Carla,
making it very difficult for any force really to counter the resurgent Taliban.
In about 10 seconds of the time we have, 8,400 U.S. troops right now currently in Afghanistan. What is their primary role there, and will they need a lot more?
Well, those 8,400 are also coupled with some international troops as well. That makes it about 14,000 total international troops there. They're advising the Afghans. And then there are some U.S. elements that are providing this counterterror force as well to hunt down the terrorists as they are expanding in the area.
We could probably expect to see a lot more in coming weeks. Thank you so much, Carla Babb and Ayaz Ghul. Carla is back in our next segment, but we're going to take a quick break right now. When we come back, Turkey steps in to defend the oil-rich country of Qatar after several Arab countries cut diplomatic ties to the kingdom.